right, perfect. So this is day 4, and we're still studying biographies. We're going to be doing that for most of this week and next week. So our objective today is readers analyze the craft decisions the biographer makes in writing a biography. So when a biographer is writing, they make certain decisions. Sometimes an author makes decisions when making their biography. Let's look at and read the book Martin and Mahalia and see what decisions the author decided about when they start and end their story. So if you think about a biography, are all biographies written the same way? No, they're not. Or else we could easily just recite, like, every biography starts with blah, and they all finish with the, or whatever. We could literally just make that up. But we know from what biographies we have read, that's not really true. Authors, biographers, like to create books that are interesting, and that means they like to write in ways that are maybe different than how other biographers would write, okay? And that's to keep the attention of their readers. So we're going to look at what are some strategies that biographers do or use that make their writing maybe a little bit more interesting than it would have been in a different way or in a more traditional way. So looking at this real quick, here is Martin. We've seen this before. And we can see right here it says, they were each born with the gift of gospel. On Sundays at the Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, Martin learned to deliver a sermon just like his grandfather, the Reverend A.V. Williams, and his daddy, the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. Martin wasn't old enough to be a preacher, but even as a boy, he had a big way of speaking. He learned this from watching his father address the congregation. So we can see there's a lot going on here. What do we notice? Let's just kind of go over what we've noticed in the past. Doesn't have to just be the picture or the colors, but what do we notice from what we've read so far?
Some of the words are emphasized.
Some words are emphasized. Okay, those are probably words we want to associate with Martin. What else?
I noticed.
Let's look at Martin closely. Remember what we talked about right before looking at Martin and Mahalia. What do we notice about him? What do we notice? Kylie.
He's reading the gospel.
So he's reading it, sure. We got that. What else do we notice about him? Marcos?
That he's preaching.
He's preaching, sure. What else do we notice about him? So he's reading the gospel, he's preaching. Some other things that we see. What do we see, Amelia?
Well, he's wearing a nice shirt and tie. So, and also he has dark skin.
Okay. What else do we notice? Right there.
His body proportions look a little small, so that might mean that he was young when he was doing this.
There we go. So Breckett's saying, well, if we look at him, he looks younger than all the other people. So this must be when he's a what?
Child.
A kid, a child, a boy, whatever word you want to substitute. And it's said like that in the text, right? When he was young, he wasn't old enough to be a preacher yet, but he learned how to address crowds because his dad and his grandfather were both preachers. So, moving on. This is, to give you context, this is at the end of the book. So, remember how we were talking about we want to focus on what's going on in the beginning and we want to focus on what's going on in the end. And I want you to tell me what you notice. So here is at the end of the book, and I'll try to read some of the text here. It was Martin's dream that one day his children and all children would be judged by the content of their character instead of the color of their skin. Then there would be no here and there, or us and them. He spake of the faith that could transform the nation into a beautiful symphony, a brotherhood where everyone could work together, pray together, stand up for freedom together. So, and then we have I Have a Dream
Yes.
right there. So, where did the book end? Does anyone remember about MLK Jr.'s, maybe some history from maybe a history class that you, or maybe one of your teachers has talked about him before, or maybe you heard it on some documentary somewhere. So where did the story end, this book end? Kylie?
Well, like, he was young at the beginning, and then he was, grown up at the end.
All right, good. So Kylie noticed, just a second, Kylie noticed that he was young, he was a boy at the beginning, and at the end of the book, he is grown up. What else do we notice? What else do we see? Brecken?
Do you want us to say what we didn't know, or
Whatever, either way.
I know that he was assassinated,
He got JFK.
So, yep, you're right. He does pass away from assassination, but is that where that book ends?
No, I
No,
know.
so, but you're right. But let's keep that in the back of our mind a little bit, that notice right there. So, because that's kind of important to what we're looking at here. So yeah, we know, if you know anything about MLK, you know that the ending is not matching up with the ending that this book has. So, when did this end? When did this book end, Marcos?
It was during the civil rights speech that he did, and he said, "I have a dream."
It was literally called I Have a Dream.
And also
Yeah.
you can see the microphone like right under him at the very like bottom part of the page.
Yeah, so the book ends with his famous speech, I Have a Dream. Why do you think the author maybe chose to finish the book there? Amelia?
I have a fact, and I can tell you that.
Okay.
So first, the telling part. So it ended with that, so it sort of had a little bit of hope to it. It wasn't very dark at the end. It was sort of like nicer and more leveled out, I guess.
Okay.
So it made more sense to sort of leave it like right there.
Okay.
And also, his name wasn't originally Martin Luther King. He had a different name, and then he decided to change it to Martin Luther King because he really liked Martin Luther.
Mm-hmm. Yep, very good. So, that was very good notice that we know, like Brecken said, we know how his story ends, but the author chose not to focus on that ending. They decided to focus on what Amelia said, hope. They decided to focus on the positive and what happened. Why would an author, a biographer, who knows, they probably knew what happened, why would they choose to end it on hope or the things that Amelia said? Why would they choose to do that, Tate? So why would they choose to end the story with more of a hope, happier ending than to tell what actually happened to him at the end of his life? Because obviously this is not the end of his life, but this is the end of that book, the biography that they wrote about him. Why did they choose to stop here?
Because if they kept going, that would not be much of a good ending. It's gotta be
Okay.
a happy ending. I know.
All right, yeah, we got that. We agree. It wouldn't be a happy ending. Why did they choose a happy ending? Why would they choose a happy ending instead of saying, well, this is the facts, this is really what happened, so I'm going to go ahead and end it there? Why?
This isn't about his whole life. It's just about what he did.
Hey, there we go. I like that. So this biography isn't about his whole life. It's about what he did. It's about his, what again? Remember yesterday we talked about how biographers choose people for different reasons. They choose them because they're interesting. They choose them because of different reasons. What is one big reason why biographers choose a particular person to write about? It's about what, Marcos?
It's either because they're famous and they want more people to know,
Okay.
or it's just that they want to educate people about them, about the person, or finally that they wanted to show something that most people don't know about them.
Okay, so famous person, share something that they don't know about them, sure. There's a lot of that stuff. But what else? There's one other big thing that we're missing. Why are people famous to begin with? What is it that they've done? What do we call that word? That it's their what? It's their, Amelia?
Accomplishments.
Yeah, their achievements, their accomplishments, what they did. So, like Tate said, they stopped and focused on what he did, what his accomplishments were, because that is what this biographer probably chose to write about Martin Luther because of his accomplishments. And so because of his accomplishments, they said, I'm not going to focus on his beginning to end. Did the biographer start at the very beginning of Martin Luther King Jr.'s life?
No, man.
Not really. Where did it start? Give me a guess.
About
Kind of where do you think it started, Kylie?
It started, while he was younger.
Yeah, about how young do you think, Kylie?
Probably 8 years old.
Maybe 8, yeah, based on the picture, maybe around that age. Do we all start at 7, 8 years old?
No.
No. We usually start where? In a hospital somewhere, being born, right?
We
Did
start
they start the story by saying Martin Luther King Jr. was born in this hospital at this day, at this hour?
You sound like
No.
a creep if you say that.
They did not, right? Some biographies do. They do actually tell you exactly where they were born and all of that. But not all biographies. And this one did not choose to do it that way. Okay. Let's move on. So, we kind of got ahead of ourselves here, but it is what it is. We're going to write down the answers to the following questions on the board. At what points in Martin Luther King Jr.'s life did the biographer decide to begin and end a story about him? Why did the biographer choose to write about Martin Luther King Jr.? So, those are the questions that we're thinking about. And we answered this one already. At what points? We said maybe 7, 8 years old, when he was a boy, and then it ended when he was talking about his I Have a Dream speech. So, why did the biographer choose to write about Martin Luther King Jr.? So what was the accomplishment or the big achievement that makes Martin Luther King Jr. worth writing about? Emmett? What is that accomplishment? Why would we write about Martin Luther King Jr.? Why did this biographer choose to write about him?
He helped free the black people from slavery.
So you're heading in the right direction, but not quite accurate. So if we're going to talk about slavery, we have to go all the way back to about the 1860s. Martin Luther King Jr. is not that old.
He was fighting
Okay.
for civil rights.
So, civil rights, yeah. Okay. So, Amelia's right. It was civil rights. But you're on the right track. Okay? Would have been Abraham Lincoln that did the slave thing. So, in this case, he was fighting against, have you guys heard of the word discrimination?
Yes.
Yeah, discrimination. That means that you are choosing not to treat somebody right based on something that you don't like about them, or you think you don't like about
Like
them.
the
It could be anything, okay? It doesn't have to just be skin color, but it could be anything.
Or
Like the
So-
Okies. Like the Okies in the California.
Yeah, like in Riley and Amelia, they're reading about a particular book about the Dust Bowl and the Okies. And so the Okies were discriminated against because they were poor. They were not at the same wealth status as everybody else. So you can discriminate for many different reasons, right? Yeah. Okay. Yes, Kylie?
Also, Martin Luther King was like important to others because he helped others, and he traded stuff to the poor because they didn't have it.
Yeah, so Martin Luther King Jr. also is very generous too. So that's probably a good reason why they would want to write about him too. So yeah, very good notice. Okay, so let's review. Biographers don't always start their biographies at the same point. Some biographies start at the beginning of a person's life and then end at the end of their life. Other biographies choose to start when the person is an adult and end after their subject has accomplished their major feat. So, in this book, Martin Luther King Jr., we ended the book after he accomplished his major feat, right? That's when we ended it. We didn't end at the end of his life. So when you're reading a biography, don't always assume that it's going to be like all the other biographies you've read. They could start at the very beginning. They could end in the middle. They could be in any sort of starting and ending point. Okay, so today when you read, choose a biography from the classroom library, unless you already are reading one. And as you read, notice the period, time, or moment in life of a subject's life that the biographer decided to write about. So you're going to do exactly what we did with this Martin and Mahalia book. You're going to look at it and say, when did they start and when did they end? Was it like the traditional, right at the very beginning of their life, when they were born, all the way to the very day that they died? Is it like that, or is it different than that? And you're going to take some noticing from that, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and stop the video right there.